They're twisting the text. They are trying to conceal its true meaning. We've heard, but their edits are shallow. The truth will out someday.
Peace of the Lord to all of you. Welcome. So we are going to talk about this Imam of Peace, Imam Tawhidi, just finishing the conversation that we started before. It is, for all intents and purposes, a three-part series. We spoke first about what was happening with the Islamic Republic of Iran, the show of the return of the king and why that is actually not being covered at all. And then we moved on to speak about Imam Tawhidi and some of the things that he says, which are very confusing. On the one hand, as a Shia Imam saying that the Muslim Brotherhood is bad, you would understand that. But then when he starts criticizing Khamenei, it's a little bit weird. And then when he says that the religion was hijacked, well, that's a problem of a whole different type, because, well, you have Sunnis and Shias, and each of them, they have lots of different cults with different beliefs, different traditions, and the whole thing is a bit of a mess. So who hijacked the religion? When, how, what did they do? Who are the culprits? And he seems to pin everything to Islamists, which we explained very clearly, I hope, last time, that there is no such thing as Islamist. It's only Islam. The so-called Islamists are the ones that actually follow Islam to a T. The defense from Imam Tawhidi is, well, that's not really Islam. These people have hijacked the religion for political gain, even though when we go to the actual religion, we see that the so-called Islamists are actually just following Islam to a T. So the problem is not Islamist, is Islam and the teachings. But Imam Tawhidi seems to have a very different view, which involves removing all of the traditions that are less than perfect, because Muhammad was an infallible human being, and therefore everything that he did and said was perfect. So when we see in the traditions things that are violent and bad in any possible way, well, we can ignore them because we know that he was perfect. Therefore, anything that says that he's not perfect, we can throw in the bin, which is weird. And also the whole thing about Muhammad being peaceful. So we saw that before, and we're going to start. We're going to continue where we left off, the final bit, which is about Aisha. Then it moves in very quickly to Mary, and then other fun bits. And we will show you other clips from other places as well that actually help make the point very, very clear. So let's jump straight to it. So in this conversation at the PBD podcast, which was phenomenal, make sure that you actually watch the whole thing. I did skip like over an hour or an hour and a half of this conversation because it's Imam Tawhidi just saying how the Muslim Brotherhood is bad and Khamenei is bad, and his story of being, or of how people try to indoctrinate him into this sort of belief and how it's a cult and all of those things. So make sure that you actually watch the whole thing, but we're focusing on the stuff that cannot be refuted basically when we come to the Quran, to the Hadiths, and to things that happen to be with their traditions, as opposed to his personal experiences, which are actually very interesting. But anyway, let's actually see. This is exactly where we left it last time, and it is about Aisha still. So let's listen to this.
Main source Muslims have to overcome the objection is the fact that your prophet married a 6-year-old and consummated at 9 years old. That's not one person spread it. This isn't President Trump saying Obama was born in Kenya and, here, go show your birth certificate. And the day the White House released the birth certificate, my graphic designer said, this is a BS birth certificate. And Obama, this is a fake birth certificate we're looking at, right? This is not that. This is something that's been around for a long time. So it's not like it's a one person that's against Muslims that is saying the founder was married a 6-year-old, 9-year-old. That's everywhere. Now, let me ask you the second one. The second one is, what is your impression of what happens if I am a Muslim and I die and I go to heaven? Are there 72 virgins waiting for me?
Okay, well, about the 72 virgins, we are going to just talk about that in a minute. It's going to be fun how he talks about it. So, still about Aisha. Well, look at this. So probably all of you watching are familiar with the works of the legendary Robert Spencer, and he has this website and his YouTube channel called Jihad Watch. And on the website, he will have lots of these articles. This one actually thought was relevant to actually discuss or bring up just as we start this, which is so Taliban stops 45-year-old man from marrying 6-year-old, force him to wait until she's 9. Oh, I wonder where that is coming from. So as much as the Imam of Peace now has programmed himself that Muhammad was perfect, therefore Aisha had to be an adult, and then he will look through any sources to confirm that, that is not the traditions. That has not been the history. This is a a quarter into the 21st century, trying to rewrite the history. And remember, the whole show began pretty much with Imam Tawhidi saying, I'm not a revisionist. And he's like, yeah, you are a revisionist. You're a revisionist big time, my man. Everything that he's saying, he's trying to change what it has been established in their traditions. Now, him being a Shia, he gets a little bit more of a, say, leeway because he can discard the whole Sunnah. All of the hadiths that are from the Sunni, he can say they are not true. Let me tell you about my Shia sources. The thing is, he's not really talking about Aisha at all. According to the Shia sources, she was, what is the polite term? The village bicycle. The Shias don't see Aisha in a good light at all. Actually, that's one of the main problems between Sunni and Shia. There are plenty, but if you see a Sunni and a Shia discuss something, they are going to start really going to blows on Aisha. The view of the Shias of Aisha is very, 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 very bad. Okay, he's ignoring all of that, and he's just saying, "Well, she was an adult," ignoring absolutely everything else. Now, let's explain briefly why and what is going on. I think what is going on in this guy's mind. Remember that to him, Muhammad is an infallible human being that cannot make any errors and so on. Okay, so imagine this example as Jesus, because if you're watching this, you are either a Christian, or B, you are familiar with at least the Christian stories. You've seen the movies or something, right? You would have an image of what the Christians say about Jesus. So we use this as an example. Say that you are a Christian and you have been told that Jesus is absolute perfection, right? Also that he performed lots of miracles. Also that he was very kind to others and those sort of things. Also that he was sacrificial, he actually sacrifices for the whole of human race, picks up the cross and so on. And he said wonderful things like turn the other cheek, as opposed to just beat the crap out of the guy who is trying to slap you, you know, very, very nice, peaceful things. And then they tell you, there is another section of stories of books that have been transmitted by the church fathers. It's not in the Bible, they are outside of the Bible, okay? But they are authority, they are the authority as well. And they describe him as, for example, him being light. Just imagine this for a minute. And that's all that you know about Jesus, and you've been growing up, and this is what has been imprinted into your head. If anyone asks you about Jesus, you are going to say this, exactly these things: perfect, miracle, sacrificial, technology, he's a light, he's a light, he's a light, he's perfect, he's perfect, he's perfect, again and again and again and again. And then you go to a speaker's corner and somebody tells you, do you know these sources here that tells you that he's the light? Okay, it also says that he was a gambler. He liked to go there, Friday nights and do a little bit of gambling. Okay. And also he said that muta is fine. You should know what muta is if you're on this channel. Okay? And that muta is fine. He said to the apostles, yeah, you can go, do muta, it's good fun. And also that he said, well, pick up your sword and go and convince people, make people believe in me, or chop them to bits. Right? Imagine that. So you have been told your whole life these things. This is imprinted into your head. No one has told you the other stuff, right? But the true character would be all of this. Obviously, this is not Jesus. I'm just giving you an example when it comes to Muhammad. So when then you are faced with this, with the reality of all of the sources, you are stuck. You have a choice to make. Number one, you can take all of them, and now you're going to be a bit radical. Now you're going to gamble. Now you're going to do muta, and now you're going to pick up a sword and go out there and do stuff. That's one option. Another option is that you're going to say, no, these things that they have told me from birth, that's the real one. And the other things, no, that's not him. It cannot be him because they've told me that he was perfect, that he was all of these wonderful things. So when these sources say that he did these other things, it's not him. Those sources are false. They are fabricated. They are misinterpreted. They have to be false. Do you see the problem? So this is what we see with Imam Tawhidi. I think this is what we see with Imam Tawhidi. From birth, he was told about Muhammad these things in red. And that's his programming. Perfect, infallible human being who could not make any errors, has the knowledge of God, everything he did is perfect. And then he is thrown the rest of the information about him, and he's decided to deny all of that. Let's deny that, let's pretend that's not there. Let's look for other hadiths that contradict these things. Because they are not good. And I've made my decision. I know who I want to follow, and it's the one in red, not the one in blue. This is denial, okay? And I think this is what we see from him, that he has already decided what Muhammad is, and then out of everything else, he will go through the hadiths, pick and choose. He will choose his sources. He will say, not these ones, not those ones. That is disgusting. That is filthy. That cannot be him, because I know he's the one in red. What he doesn't realize is that it is the same people who told him about one section and the other section. It is the same people have written everything. So you will have the Sahih Hadiths that say the things in red and the things not in red. They will be the same. But he jumps in because he's made a conclusion as to who the character is. He has to deny all of those. What is the correct word to describe that? Hypocrisy? Picking and choosing? Do you see the problem? He decides who Muhammad was. And he does that because they've told him that he was perfect. So now, every time he sees something that is less than perfect, he's going to do what he can to ignore all of that, to remove all of that. Because in his head, he's perfect. So those things cannot be true. Do you see that confirmation bias? Okay. So hopefully this example is clear. Let me know if it isn't. And this is what Muslims experience. That's why when they are shown this sort of hadiths, they will jump in and say, Daif, this one here that says light, that one is Sahih. This one's here, Daif. Because they don't want him to be less than perfect. What happens if Islam takes over their lands? Yeah, Muhammad becomes everything in blue. And these ones, they start to take form. And then it's not only 3 out of these ones, because the majority of hadiths, they are horrible. Okay? Do you see what happens? If Islam takes over, that's when they have to change and accept Muhammad for everything that he is. Do you really think that a Muslim is allowed to say in a Muslim country, I don't take that hadith because it's daif, because I don't like it? Do you think that they can do that? That is insane. Of course they cannot do that. A little while ago, I read a book from a guy who was a reformist, a Muslim reformist, and it was incredible. He was saying, we need to read the Quran through the lenses of the 21st century. And if you think about it, Muhammad was not against homosexuals. And Muhammad was not against women, not wearing the hijab. And he was not against this. And he was all about peace. And you read the book from a reformist like this, and you're thinking, oh boy, I mean, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to make Islam inclusive to everybody. But my man, you're writing that from a country that is not Islamic. If Islam takes over, you are the first one to get the sword. You are the first one. What you are saying contradicts every single teaching of Islam. You are trying to create your own religion. And remember, one of the dangers of Islam is that the teachings say you need to follow the example of the Prophet until the day of judgment. There is no break. You don't get to go and rewrite history now. That was not allowed. Think about it. In Christianity is different. The rules or the things that are taught in the Bible, they are morality based. As morality changes, as we grow, morality changes. That's why it took about 1800 years for the Christians to abolish slavery. Well, for the first 300 years, they were slaves and they were being prosecuted. So the first 300 years don't count at all. But then we had another like 12 or 1500 years where slavery was still a normal thing. Why? People still had to grow, they still had to learn. As things became less violent, more advanced, more intelligent, people read more, they were more literate than ever before, the morality changed. It became better. And then pretty much all of a sudden, people could read the Bible and say, hey, no, hang on a minute. According to the Bible, slavery is not good. I think we need to do something about it. And then they did something about it. Okay? But if you went back 1,000 years, I don't think that many Christians would actually understand that. Morality changes with time. And the teachings of Jesus, they seem to adapt because we read it again with new eyes and it means something a little bit different, which is great. That's not in Islam. In Islam, it's very prescriptive. It is actually written and it is exactly what it says. When it says in the Sharia law, you should not do anything to the innocent, it's like, that is very, very nice. But you have to take that together with the verses in the Quran that says that those who are not Muslims, they are the worst of creatures. So you cannot change those two. They are going like hand in hand. You cannot do anything to the Muslims. But to the non-Muslims, they are the worst of creatures. How are you going to remove that? Are you going to abrogate that verse in the Quran? That the non-Muslims are the worst of creatures? Are you going to abrogate it? Because otherwise we have a problem. See? So now we're going to see what our friend Imam of Peace has to say about Mary. And oh boy, we have a lot to say about it. All right, so here we go, the PBD podcast. And like I said before, make sure that you watch it in full. It is a really, really good watch and certainly worth seeing what the Imam of Peace has to say. So let's go and see what happens now.
Where are you at with that?
2 questions.
Oh, this is first, he actually just said about the virgins in paradise, but I think he's going to speak first about Mary.
Patrick, that need unpacking.
Oh, do it. Go for it.
Okay. Firstly, with regards to rumors, I gather you're a proud Christian.
I am.
Okay. What's the rumor about Mary? Peace be upon her,
Okay.
the mother of Jesus.
Yeah.
What do our Jewish brothers in Abrahamic faith think of Mary?
Not the same.
Okay. And it's not nice either.
It's not nice either. No.
Does it bring you value that Christianity is part of an Abrahamic lineage from Abraham, well, Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, this tradition all the way down to Jesus that the Bible refers to? Of course, you have something to stand on theologically.
Okay.
I understand the whole concept or faith that Jesus Christ is the Savior and the Son of God. I understand. And
Okay, well, interesting. You see how imams, Muslims, they don't understand the word Messiah. I mean, they have it in their books, but when you speak with Muslims, everybody's going to run from trying to explain that word because they have to make Jesus just a messenger and actually a messenger that fails epically, because according to the Quran, Jesus says, worship one God, and then they unalive him. But they don't unalive him because God takes him. But when you go to the tafsirs, nobody knows the meaning. So the whole thing is nonsense on a whole different level. But okay, let's just focus on Mary for a second. He's saying the rumor about Mary. Let's make this thing clear. There is no rumor about Mary, period. Okay, that is nonsense. It's quite simple. I was an atheist for 40 years of my life. I have absolutely no patience for a discussion about God, heaven, hell, angels, demons, any of that. It's like I would send you packing if you even tried to have a conversation with me about any of those things. So, and every atheist watching, you know exactly what I'm saying, okay? Because I'm describing your beliefs. You know how babies are made. So when somebody told you, oh, Mary conceived, but not by a man, but she was virgin, but she gave birth when she was still a virgin. No man had touched her. It's like you are an atheist. You have already concluded that is nonsense. Okay? It's really that simple. You know how babies are made. If you have a daughter and she comes home and says, Daddy, Daddy, I am pregnant, but no man has touched me, you know what has happened. Okay? Because your conclusion happened first. The conclusion is there is no such thing as miracles. There is no such thing as God. Those things are not there. They don't exist. Therefore, the moment they tell you Mary gave birth when she was a virgin, she conceived being a virgin, you already have concluded that is impossible. It does not happen in this universe. It does not happen in reality. It's not a rumor. This is a matter of belief. If you believe that Jesus is the Word of God who took on flesh, it's like, yes, virgin birth, no problem. But if you don't believe in that, that's it. You have already concluded what should be the obvious, okay, which is, you know how babies are made. It shouldn't, it's not a rumor. Like, how is that a rumor? Hmm? It is the very basic common sense. And as I said, when I was an atheist, for me, it's very simple. Of course, it didn't happen. Of course, I know how babies are made, so I know how that conception happened. And then when Jesus was crucified, he was dead and buried, and that was the end of the story. And then they created the stories, they made him divine. You see, all explained from an atheist point of view. Is no such thing as rumors. This is what you would say from an atheist point of view. Anything to do with God, with miracles, you are removing all of that from the story immediately. And we cannot even have a conversation about that, because you're going to say, how can you believe that a woman gave birth when she was a virgin? That is nonsense. And it's like, yeah, I know how babies are made. It doesn't happen in this reality. But if you want to get there, we need to talk about God first, okay? The problem is about the from where you are standing. So it is not like gossip, like, oh no, look what happened. Why? Because if in your head it is possible, there is such thing as God and heaven and hell, and maybe Jesus was actually God who took on flesh. Okay, we can have a conversation. If you are already believing that, or you are um, close to that, you are going to join the dots very quickly, because the virgin birth didn't just happen. We're not talking about a person from your neighborhood who said, hey, nobody has touched me and I'm pregnant. We're not talking about this. We're talking about an event that had been prophesied before, hundreds of years before. The Jewish people, they were waiting for the virgin to give birth. So it didn't happen out of nowhere, as insane as it sounded. But also, that baby, when he was born, he did things that no human could do. That's the whole point, that you have to take the story as a whole. Do you believe that Jesus died on the cross and resurrected on the third day? If your answer is no, I'm an atheist, those things don't happen in reality, it's like, fine. So we don't need to talk about the virgin birth, because, this is just how it is. No miracles. It's not a rumor. It is simple. If you do not believe in God, miracles, angels, demons, anything of the sort, then you have already made your conclusions. And it is exactly what I have told you before. If you're a believer, then you're going to explore that. And this baby doesn't just appear and then, lives a normal life. It performs a lot of signs, a lot of miracles, things that cannot happen in this world. So everything goes back to the beginning. Do you believe that such things happen, that there is God, there is Satan, there is everything in between? If your answer is no, then you believe that none of those things happen. They were either magic tricks, like David Copperfield sort of magic, or they just didn't happen, they're inventions. But if you're a believer, is when you take everything as a package and it's like, yes, all of these things were actually prophesied a long time before, so that we would believe when they did happen, we would look at those prophecies and says, yes, these incredibly impossible things did happen and we were actually waiting for them for a really long time. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, well, let's actually continue with what he's saying about Mary.
And that being above everything I just mentioned. I understand that. But the rumor about Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, is a very serious one. And it still stands according to the Abrahamic faith of Judaism, which both your prophets and my prophets come from. Your prophet was, Jesus Christ was Jewish at the end of the day. For us, he's a prophet of the Israelites.
Okay.
And all of God's prophets for us were Israelites. We don't have female prophets, by the way, obviously. But the Prophet Muhammad is the only Arab non-Israelite prophet.
Okay, a lot to unpack. First of all, my man, just join the dots. If, according to your traditions, every single prophet happened to be Israelite, and the one that sticks out happens to be Muhammad from the Ishmaelites, you should know that your book is not talking about him. My man, just join the dots for God's sake. If every single prophet was an Israelite, you're not going to all of a sudden have a guy from the Ishmaelites. Like, it doesn't make any sense. By the way, the whole thing about they don't have any female prophets or prophetesses is a little bit weird, okay? So, that's a little bit weird. And he says, of course. It's like, and why not? I thought you had read the Bible. And as we discussed last time as well, so who was Jesus sent to? Was it actually to the Jews? What, like everybody else? Like Moses? And then Jesus was sent to, and then he told them, worship one God. Is like, dude, I don't know if you knew this, but 2000 years ago, the Jews were actually worshiping one God. They hadn't actually moved to polytheism like they had done in previous centuries. If you actually look at the Bible, the Old Testament is the Jews, they are worshiping God, and then they start worshiping idols and stuff. Hundreds of years later, something happens. God sends a prophet or a messenger, puts them back in place, punishes them, and rinse and repeat. 2000 years ago, they were worshiping one God, period. The one thing that they were just doing was being too much about the law and being even a bit too zealous about the law. But about worshiping one God, yeah, they were doing sacrifices, they were memorizing and reciting the Torah and so on. Like, makes no sense. Anyway, let's continue with what he has to say.
Do you know that that rumor still stands in the tradition of every single Jew? And that rumor stands in the seminaries.
Okay, once again, not a rumor, it is quite simple. If the Jews don't believe in Jesus as the Messiah, okay? The Jews are waiting for the Messiah to this day. The Christians are waiting for the Messiah to return. That disagreement is there. They actually say Jesus was not the Messiah, and in order for him to not be the Messiah, he cannot fulfill prophecies. That's the whole point, okay? So it's equivalent of the Jews stopping their belief like a day before Jesus, up to that point, okay? And still waiting for the Messiah. And people pointing at Jesus and says, you see, here is the Messiah. And the Jews say, no, it's not him. And then people saying, here are the miracles. Here you have the virgin birth. Here you have the crucifixion and resurrection. Here you have this. Here you have this. Here you have this. And the Jews say, no, 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 it's not him, guys. We understand our books. It's not him. This is not a rumor. Like literally, it is their teaching. Either you accept Jesus as being the Word of God who took on flesh, and then you take everything as a package because you will understand the story. Or if they're saying, no, Jesus was just a nice rabbi, that's all, but just a man, then everything miraculous has to be removed from him. It's going to be just a fabrication, like the fabrications that we have about Muhammad in the Hadiths, exactly the same way. People trying to make him divine. So the whole conversation is that the Christians saying Jesus is the real deal, and the Jews saying, no, that is a fabrication. It's not a rumor. It is, do you accept Jesus as the Word of God who took on flesh or no? If the answer is no, then you are joining the dots about everything else very quickly. Not a virgin birth, not death and resurrection, no miracles, all fabrications. It is just what it is. But look about what happens with Islam. They take stuff like saying, no, 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 he was actually born from the Virgin. And actually, he's the Word of God. And actually, he was supported by the Holy Spirit. And he's like, okay, so you guys are Christians. No, 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 no. Being born from a virgin means that he was created. Just like Adam, just like John, just like everybody else. Just created. Okay? And Jesus being the Word of God. No, that doesn't mean the Word. It doesn't mean a hypostasis. It doesn't mean that he's divine. It means he is like Adam. He's like Yahya, okay? And it's like, and when it says that he's supported by the Holy Spirit, that means you guys are Trinitarians. Basically, your book is Trinitarian, okay? Jesus goes to get his baptism with John, and the Holy Spirit descends on him, and then he performs miracles, being filled with the Spirit, right? So you guys are Trinitarians. No, no, the Holy Spirit means Gabriel. Trust me, bro. It's like your book is just telling you the whole Christian belief, and then you are just replacing names. You're putting Muhammad here, you're putting Gabriel here. You're saying the word doesn't mean the word, and the virgin birth means, trust me, bro. It's very, very much nonsense. Anyway, let's see how the Quran actually helps the Christians a lot. That he should probably tell the Christians in Nigeria.
You know how that rumor was neutralized, at least in the Abrahamic household of ours? This book. The Quran did the greatest service to Christianity. The Quran that I believe in, this is the same Quran. When you say people follow a book, this is the same book.
Great. I think actually Imam Tawhidi should actually go to Nigeria and speak with the guys from Boko Haram who actually follow their Quran to a T. Because the Quran has done a great service to Christianity, to humanity, in fact, right? So now he's going to actually quote from the infancy gospel, basically an actual heresy. But do we see they're trying to rewrite the history? This is part of the propaganda that I really absolutely hate. Why is he now going to say that the Quran is speaking very nicely about Mary? Why is he not going to say about the verses that say that the ones who are not Muslims are the worst of creatures? Why is he picking and choosing the verses that makes everything look very much religion of peace, but he's ignoring everything else? Why don't we read Surah 9, the most violent one, the one that was revealed last, which abrogates the rest of the Quran? No, not today? Okay, then.
That if I were to open the very heart of this book, now give or take a few pages here and there, because of course you're dealing with a publication that puts a license and a contents page, right? This, we call it qalb al-Quran, the heart of the Quran, here, so the viewers can see it. The first chapter in the heart of the Quran is Surah Maryam, the chapter of Mary. And it begins by narrating the miracle of the birth of Jesus Christ.
Okay. First of all, my man, you need to open your eyes. You have a book where the only woman mentioned in the whole book by name is Mary. Okay? That's great. She has a whole surah named after her. Okay? Read the room. This book has nothing to do with Islam. It was taken from a Judeo-Christian background. If this was about Momo, there would be a surah called Amina. It would be called something else. Nothing to do with Mary. The fact that a whole surah is named after her, it should tell you clearly where this book came from. People who absolutely, really loved Mary, and that is not the Muslims. They didn't exist at that time. Think about the insanity of this. Mary gets more mentions than Muhammad. Muhammad is mentioned 4 times in the Quran, and we've unpacked them before. It's not him the book is talking about. So the fact that you have a whole surah about Mary is telling you who were the authors of this book, like to a degree, because now what he's going to read, I think he's going to read it, is going to be a heresy. It's not what happened. Let's see if he says, I can't remember.
Islam is the only religion that told our Jewish brothers and sisters that Mary gave birth to Jesus without a husband. This is the same book, by the way. You point to a religion for me that did this service to Christianity and to Jesus Christ and to Mary other than Islam.
You didn't answer the question.
No,
though.
but I'm getting there.
No, you're not
I'm
answering.
getting there.
So
Okay, so actually I like Patrick. Now he's saying like, you are going a little bit around houses. Just to address what Imam Tawhidi has said. What a great service to Christianity. First of all, you have no need to do any service to Christianity. The Bible is there. The Bible actually tells what happens, okay? Even if 600 years later, Christendom was massive at that point. And a guy appears to say, no, Mary was indeed a virgin. Let me actually tell you, from a fake pseudo-gospel to defend Mary is like, dude, most of the people in the region, including in the Arabian Peninsula, they were Christians. No one would say that about Mary. Of course, the Jews would still have their beliefs, which actually have contributed to a lot of conflict over the years, certainly. But the belief was established. This is not like, you know, poor little Christians. There were a few here and they were being bullied because people were insulting Mary. So here comes Muhammad to save the day, to say, let me tell you how Jesus spoke from the cradle, to say, hey guys, don't worry, she didn't do fornication. She was just conceived magically. I'm a baby speaking. That's how you know. It's like, what are you talking about? This is hundreds of years after the time of Jesus. Everybody knew the stories. They knew speaking from the cradle didn't happen. And the reason they knew that the virgin birth happened was because people believed in the crucifixion and resurrection. Once they believe that, everything else starts to make sense. This guy is selling this like, oh, Muhammad comes with this information, and all of a sudden, the Christians are so incredibly grateful that someone comes to their defense. What are you talking about? Have you looked at the map? The map had been all Christendom. All of these people they knew. They had already decided this. In fact, if somebody actually said something against Mary, they were probably getting in trouble. Okay, so what he's quoting here is adding nothing to the conversation. Oh, and by the way, and the birth of Jesus Christ, when he's actually now quoting from Surah Miriam, that is not correct. That is actually part of it. It's actually from a pseudo-gospel. But the surah that actually mentions the birth of Jesus, which is congruent with the Bible, is Surah 97, which they have rewritten the whole thing to be about the Quran. Surah 97 is about the birth of Jesus, and very clearly so. And notice how he keeps now saying those things. What would happen if Patrick told him, hang on a minute, are you saying that these people are so respectful to Mary? So isn't there a hadith where Muhammad said that when he's in heaven, one of his wives will be Mary, the mother of Jesus? That is in the hadith. What would Imam Tawhidi say? No, because remember, Muhammad is an infallible human being who cannot make any mistakes, and everything in him is perfect. So he wouldn't disrespect Mary in that manner. That has to be a fabricated hadith. There is no way around it. So you see, like we've shown you before, he has already made his conclusion. So whatever you show him that makes Muhammad be awful, his answer will be, no, that has to be a fabrication. It cannot be, because he was an infallible human being who made no mistakes. Alhamdulillah.
So you have to realize, I was an atheist for 25 years of my life.
Right.
And what you just said right there was one of the reasons why I had a hard time being a Christian. Because for me, that was an era of naivete. How hard is it for somebody to convince the people that I was a virgin and I'm pregnant and I haven't had sex with anybody? How did I get pregnant?
Yeah, and that's exactly like what I said. After once you've concluded, well, there is no such thing as miracles and God and stuff, then yes, it becomes very, very clear. The thing is, once you believe, then things take a different turn. Because what is it that is, okay, I believe that Jesus actually died and resurrected, but the virgin birth is just, I'm not sure. You see, it doesn't work like this. It really comes as a whole thing. And one of the strongest evidence is that a lot of the stuff was prophesied before. And again, you can believe or not believe, but you have to take the story as it is, not just pick and choose. And about belief, he's going to talk about the 72 virgins. I'm just thinking, should I explain something? No, it would be probably a little bit too personal, and actually maybe later. Let's see actually how it continues.
On vacation for Iran? No. So I came from that, but you haven't answered the question yet.
Please ask me.
The question is about the prophet, the criticism of him when you read the stories about his wives, when you read the stories about Aisha, specific to Aisha, I ask you two things. It was Aisha and it was the 72 virgins when I died.
Yes. Okay. So 72 virgins is real. That's in Islam. It's in the concept of it.
That's a little weird.
The concept of it is in.
Yeah, what he's not going to say is, actually, when you are on level of radicalization 2 out of 10, it's, well, that thing is there and you can get there, yes, by praying. But then when you advance a little bit more, is when you are told that the only way is to go out with a boom. And then is when you get your 72 virgins. And that's certainly not a scam, okay? But let's see, because he actually says then more about the 72 virgins. Let's see if it's here.
We're not going to stop counting. And every maid, preachers who say every one of these virgins comes with 100 maids. So we're not going to stop counting. And every maid has a secondary maid. So what is this? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, there is a solid Abrahamic tradition that is focused on purity and piety.
Yeah, and getting 72 virgins in paradise actually sounds to me like purity and piety. Where do I sign up?
And then you have the development of a religion, and there are conversations between the religious hierarchy and the adherents of that religion. We have traditions, for example, where our prophet was sitting down and people would come and ask him the same question. And he would answer in a different way. He wouldn't misguide people, but he would give the same answer in a different way. And the companions would say, why would you answer them differently? He says, because the first one was a farmer. If I give him examples using trees and fruits, he would understand. And the second guy was a businessman. If I speak to him in real estate, he'll understand better.
Okay, that's interesting. I wonder if that's what happened with the ahrufs when Umar takes the guy who is reciting the Quran in a different manner and then goes to Muhammad and they both recite the same verse in different ways despite of being from the same tribe. And Muhammad says, yeah, both of you got it right. Because didn't you know that the Quran has been revealed in 7 ahrufs? Nobody knows what the ahrufs are. There are multiple explanations, like 40 of the ahrufs. Makes no sense. We have the receipts and the whole thing is nonsense. But there is that very interesting hadith that people still try to cling on, even though it makes no sense. It doesn't really matter how you take it. But let's see what else.
It's more about being relatable. So, number one, the idea of 72 virgins is not a pillar in Islam, meaning that if you don't believe in it, you cannot be a full Muslim. No, it is there in the Quran, part of a conversation between the religion and the the developing society, with a reminder that you're talking about a society, Patrick. Can I just ask?
Okay, so again, what a lot of nonsense. Find me a Muslim that doesn't believe that heaven in Islam is the 72 virgins. Just find me one. It is canon. It is in their scriptures. There is no way of changing that. But here he goes. He knows it's nonsense. So he goes, oh, well, you don't have to believe in it. Okay, yeah. That's good. Go to ISIS or to Boko Haram. Go to them and ask them, hey, so you are doing all of these things. So why? And they say, because in the book of Jihad, Muhammad said that he wanted to be martyred and come back to life and be martyred and come back to life and be martyred and come back to life and then be martyred and go to heaven. So I want to do like him, and then I go to heaven, I get 72 virgins. Tell him, did you know that this is not really a pillar of Islam? You tell them that. Maybe they will think their life choices a little bit. And let's just make matters really bad here for a minute. So what we have on screen is the website from Shadi Nasser, ER Quran, where he actually gets the all of the Qira'at, all of the different recitations that he finds. And when we go to Surah 44, verse 54, right in here, where we see Hur, see the word? The Huris, the virgins in paradise. There are even different readings for that, even on that one. Such an important word that it should have been there, because it's such an important thing. It's in fact in the Quran. Even one of those has a different reading. What that means is quite simple. It does not mean Huri. Did you know that the term Huri, these virgins in paradise, that term did not exist before Islam? The first place where it is mentioned ever is in the Quran, and nobody knows the meaning of. If I'm wrong about this, let me know in the comment section below where that is used anywhere at all, ever, before the Quran. So in the Quran, it's talking about what people get in paradise. And there is a word they cannot even read. Notice, if you know anything about Arabic, that even this word, hur, is the exact beginning of the word hawariyun. We have these examples with other words as well. So we have a word here that nobody understands. It appears first in the Quran. It is not attested before. They come up with lots of different explanations of trying to make this make sense, meaning that hur comes from white, so it has to be like clear what? Virgins. It makes absolutely no sense. Anyone familiar with the works of Christoph Luxemburg? He puts forward the idea that what this is saying is people would be welcome into paradise with clear grapes, as opposed to you will be married with huris. This word is not Arabic. It was not Arabic, and nobody understood it before Islam. The Quran appears first. And as they start to write their traditions, basically they start to invent their religion, they have to make sense of this word. And lo and behold, it becomes virgins in paradise. And if you go on jihad, that's how you get there, no questions asked, except if you read The Relevance of the Traveler, and then it debunks all of that, you know? But even this word, it happens to not have been attested before. It is not Arabic. It made no sense when this was written, or rather when it was canonized. It became that it was about the Houris in paradise. So what Muslims are getting in paradise, not that they should think about it too much, 100% is not going to be their 72 virgins, because that's not what the Quran says. In fact, even when the Quran says, and they will have purified spouses in heaven, it doesn't say that. Okay, if you read it without the diacritics, you will see that it says they will have purified souls, purified spirits. It's just talking about you being pure in paradise, nothing to do with you having wives. So it's all very interesting. It's the power of reinterpretation, which we are in the 21st century trying to make sense of this, because we know that from day one, when they tried to canonize that, they made it into a whole different story. Another very clear example of this is Surah 48, verses 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you have the time, go and look at that. Otherwise, we will talk about those in the future, but they are very clearly not talking about anything of what these so-called imams and scholars have been telling us. It's basically the Arabic tells something different, just like Surah 355, Surah 7, 157 and 158, and all of that, and Surah 9, 31, and all of that stuff. But listen to this nonsense.
Righteousness is not in entering your houses from the back doors. Rather, righteousness is to be mindful of Allah. So enter your homes through their proper doors. Patrick, tell me, why is it that Archangel Gabriel, this is again, I'm speaking about the Islamic tradition, Archangel Gabriel, who carried each and every one of these verses down onto the Prophet Muhammad. And in the Quran, we are told when revelation comes down, the Prophet, his temperature goes up, right? It's something heavy that's being bestowed upon him. He's receiving a message from God. He begins to sweat. He's in fear. Now, the Prophet has to go through that entire process for then a verse to tell him, please tell your guys, and tell the believers. He's speaking to the Muslims, the first Muslim community in Mecca. Enter your home from the front door. What were you doing? Like, what were you doing? Do you see? That's the level of intellect we need to be mindful of.
Okay, my man. So, well said. First, there is no such thing as this revelation coming from Gabriel. The Quran never talks about Gabriel in that manner. It's the Holy Spirit. It doesn't talk about Muhammad. It talks about the Hawariyun and Jesus, and that's that. But this verse, so enter your houses through the proper doors. And then he's taking this like, oh my goodness me, what were these people doing? Were they actually entering through the windows? What is going on? What do you think that these people were? Did you really think that this thing happened during the Paleolithic period? They didn't understand what a door is? Okay, my man, open your eyes. This is actually talking not don't trespass. This is another way of saying don't trespass on your neighbor. Okay, enter the houses through the proper door. Do not trespass. You see how they would mistranslate something like this, but most likely this verse was telling a completely different story. For you, my man, to read this, you need to remove all of the diacritics, all of the vocalization, all of the hamzas, take the alifs with a pinch of salt, and then try to make sense of it. Because the guys that did that exercise about 1100 years ago, they got it all wrong. They were pushing a different narrative, and they were hiding what the verse actually said. Of course, the people well, there was no Mecca, but the people in Arabia, they knew how to enter a door, how to enter a house, okay? But this is the level of programming. They see something like this that makes no sense. They have to make sense of it. And whole narratives are written around this nonsense. Just like the verse that says you were created from a liquid emanating from between the backbone and the ribs. That proves the whole thing to be nonsense. So countless explanations there will be about that very clear verse, because they don't want you to see what it actually said. See? all nonsense. Like what? People didn't know where a door was. They could build a house, but they didn't know how to enter the house. He is just saying, you see, Muhammad was actually sent to these in absolute imbeciles. So he had to tell them from God how to enter a house. My man, these regions had been Christianized. For goodness sake. This was after the collapse of the Greek Empire. And remember, Arabia, or this land, not that the Quran actually happened in that area, they were next to the Abyssinian kingdom, which were very advanced for a really long time. They were very close to Egypt, who had been incredibly advanced. They were close to the trade routes going all the way to China and joining with the Mediterranean. So that means the Romans, the Greeks, very advanced civilizations would have been in contact with these people, and they didn't know how to enter a house. You need to start using your brain. You are not reading what the original Quran said. You are being read. You are reading something that people made up 1100 years ago because they didn't want you to read what the book originally said. They have turned this into a whole different story. Open your eyes already. Can you imagine if those people were that thick? The Romans would have conquered all of them, no problem, or the Abyssinians or anybody else, which actually, in fact, they did. I mean, the Abyssinians are the ones who took control of the whole region, right? Watch the series with Callum, Titans TV. Okay, this is an interesting bit. Look at this.
The so-called conquest of Mecca, where the Prophet came in and took Mecca, he was simply coming back home. So by law, if the chiefs of, by tribal law, by international law, if the owners of the land submit to you, and by tribal law and Islamically, all laws submit that the Prophet entering Mecca without a single drop of blood being shed, right? He took over Mecca. So he came back home. He's from Quraysh. He came to guide Quraysh, and Quraysh opposed him and tried to murder him. So upon return, what he did was, without spilling a single drop of blood, he entered Mecca, which is today the holiest site for Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And God just
Okay, that's very nice. That's very, very nice. Without dropping a single drop of blood. Can I zoom in on this? Let me see if I can zoom in 1 sec. Let me zoom in here for you on a little hadith. Okay. Hope can you see it? It's Hassan, of course. If you don't know what Hassan means, it means that you can just say that it's Daif if you don't like it. But the same applies to Sahih, okay? It's just a rule in Islam. So let's see. 222 here. It was narrated from Musab bin Sa'd that his father said, on the day of the conquest of Mecca, the messenger of Allah granted amnesty to the people, except 4 men and 2 women. He said, kill them, even if you find them clinging to the covers of the Kaaba. Right. So when he says that without a drop of blood, he means he goes in without a drop of blood, and then of course he drops blood, but also it's not him. If you notice something in the traditions, and I'm happy to stand corrected, Muhammad never unalives anyone. He just commands people and people just follow him, which is insane because as a warlord, people would follow the warlord who is the most brutish. And he's not described as such. He's described as he just gives a command and people follow it. But do you think that this means exactly what he has said, or has he been a little bit misleading? He just walked back into Mecca. He just walked. He walked. It's his land. He just walks in. He just opens. No blood, nothing. All peaceful. Oh, we're going to get to the peaceful bit. Okay, I had missed this part of the clip earlier and I wanted to speak about it. So look at what he says right here and let me know what you think about what he's going to say.
The Prophet Muhammad was born in 570. He passed away in 632. He was a prophet for 23 years. In 23 years, all of his battles were defensive. And you can look this up as I'm speaking. They were all defensive.
Right. Okay. Very defensive guy. Look, guys, this is what a defensive map looks like. Isn't that phenomenal? So this guy is preaching. All of this orange, as you can see here, is Muhammad. So we need to believe, because this guy says so, that all of this is conquered defensively. Yeah, mostly peaceful. It's mostly peaceful wars, or by preaching. So he preaches, and then everybody just believes in him. And some people fight him, but anyway, he fights defensively. Look at what happened immediately after. By the time that we get to, do we have actually Ali in here? No, we have only up to Uthman, okay? So that would be what? Okay, actually, well, let's see. This one's here, very, very peaceful defensive wars of Abu Bakr, okay? And then the big guy, Umar. That's why I say that Umar is the inspiration for the Muhammad, or one of the inspirations, and certainly the ones that starts the book. Look at all of this orange up to here. Do you see all of this? All of this here? Defensive. All of this is defensive. You just preach defensively. Hmm? And in no time, by the time that we get basically to the Umayyads, all of these things that you have in the map, how could you possibly believe this? This is beyond insanity. Think about this. To Muslims, they need to tell them all of this is defensive. People just believed in the Prophet because he just came around and he gave such a wonderful revelation. Now, if you are completely ignorant when it comes to Islam, you believe that because probably you've read the Quran, it made no sense to you, and it has pieces here, pieces there, and I don't know, you're trying to make sense of the whole thing, but they tell you it's because it is so wonderful. It's like now we're in the 21st century and we're looking at it with a magnifying glass. The Quran makes no sense. It is not in order. It tells stories that contradict each other. The whole thing makes no sense. Now, the people in these lands, they were Jews and Christians. There were as well Zoroastrians and so on. But for the most part, Jews and Christians, and mostly Christians. These people, they would have had hundreds of years worth of tradition. They would be going to the church. They would know the stories. This warlord and the ones that come after, they cannot just go to all of these lands and conquer them by saying, trust me, bro, Jesus was a prophet. He was not God incarnate. Because reasons. These people have traditions, and actually they have a big, thick book that explains a lot of information, which the Quran does not. It's not like they went to these lands and they told to people, you know, there are these problems with the Bible. We have this other book, and it makes everything so clear. The Quran doesn't make anything clear. In fact, as we have shown here on the channel, the tafsirs that are meant to explain what happened on the cross, they had no idea what happened on the cross. You go to the tafsirs and they tell you many different stories. They were trying to make it up hundreds of years after the time of Muhammad. So imagine if these people are trying to conquer all of these lands peacefully, they will say to the Christians, hey, you guys don't believe in God properly. We know we had the last prophet. People will say, okay, tell me, what is it about this last prophet? What did he say? Well, he said that Jesus was not on the cross because God took him up out of love for him. Christians would probably go, okay, actually, you know what? That sort of makes sense, because why would you let Jesus actually suffer on the cross? Okay. So what happened, by the way? Because we have here in our writings that people saw him being crucified. They wouldn't even have an answer to that. When we go through the traditions, there was a guy called Tatianos, a guy called Joseph, also a guy who slandered him, who is not even named. Also, someone who simply looked like Jesus. Basically, they confused him. Also, an apostle who said, I will take your place. Those things were created hundreds of years later. If you had to convince the Christians from all of these lands that Jesus was not on the cross, that something else happened, and that it made sense, there would be one story. It would be one. It would be, let me tell you what happened. So what happened is, it was a hologram, So Jesus, people thought that he was there, but he was already taken up to the heavens, and it was a hologram. That's what they saw, okay? And then, of course, they would be encountered with, hang on a minute, but he came back. He actually came back 3 days later, and he spoke to people. So they would have to engage in that conversation. These Christians, they are not going to convert to a guy who says, trust me, bro, Jesus was not on the cross, and they don't have an answer until hundreds of years later. And even to this day, you will see imams that will say, no, Jesus actually did die, and then God restored him and then took him up, and all of different explanations. Why? Because the Quran was Judeo-Christian, and they've tried to give a different explanation. All of these things did not happen peacefully, and they were not defensive, okay? This is this guy, like we said before, coping and coping hard, or lying and lying hard. Either A, he knows that all of this was the conquest against the worst of creatures, and everybody has to be forced to pay the jizya, convert, or basically be fought. Those are the rules of Islam. Either that's what happened, or alternatively, that didn't happen. And Muhammad was just preaching peace, and it got immediately hijacked. Remember that he said that the religion was hijacked? When? Was it hijacked by Abu Bakr? I mean, he was sent around for too long. It was only a couple of years. Or was it by Umar, the one that actually conquers all of this land? And there are accounts of Umar unaliving lots of Christians in Palestine because they were Christians. So when he says, I know the sources, you can ask me about the treatment of Christians and Jews, and I will tell you, it's like, yeah, I know the sources too. And what he's saying has nothing to do with peace. All of this was about imposing one religion. This is what we see to this day. We're going to take over, we're going to impose Sharia, and then you're going to have basically two options, or you get the sword, right? At what point was the religion hijacked? Remember when he said that? I will tell you, from day one. These things didn't happen. The conquest did not begin here. The conquest began in a different area. This is the map that we've been given now for different reasons. The book was not even in Arabic. In fact, the book had nothing to do with Islam, with Muhammad, or anything of the sort. Hence why Muhammad is mentioned by name only 4 times. And 2 of those verses are in the past tense. And when you look at them with a magnifying glass, you see that they were describing Jesus, as much of the Quran is. At one point, hundreds of years after this conquest, is when they are inventing a religion. And they happen to have this book, which is Judeo-Christian. So they start to change the meaning, and they make it all about Muhammad, or they try. But they cannot change the book that much. It's probably a popular book, certainly, because otherwise it would have been wiser to just destroy it and write something from scratch. But for some reason, they didn't do that. Now, it is in the traditions with everything when everything takes shape. And when he's saying nothing about violence, that he was very peaceful, we know that's not the case. There is a hadith that says that one of the companions, one of the wives of the prophet, was making fun of him behind his back. So one of the followers went and unalived the wife of the prophet while she was breastfeeding the son of the prophet, or the child. I can't remember if it was a boy or a girl. And then the prophet said to the group, hey, who has unalived my wife? And the guy stepped forward and said, it was I. But, she was bad-mouthing you. And what did the prophet say? Oh, blessed be you, my son. Well done. Congratulations. Here, have a cigar. The hadiths are full of those things. But Imam Tawhidi is reading those and saying, no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It couldn't have happened, because he was an infallible human being who made no mistakes, and he was perfect. So therefore, that cannot be true. He makes his own religion. Every Muslim takes those things as facts. And they have been taking them as facts since the time, 200 years after the time of Muhammad, maybe 300. And now he comes and says that they didn't happen. because Islam is about peace. Do you see the hypocrisy in all of this? Do you see the problems? So, what do you think about this guy? Hmm? If you haven't watched the full show, make sure that you do. It's actually really, really good. The first 1 hour or so, he's just criticizing the Muslim Brotherhood and also the also Khamenei, which is weird to a degree. You wouldn't expect that from a Shia. You would expect him to just pin everything on the Sunnis and all of the Sunnis. Okay, not only the Muslim Brotherhood. But the way that he plays fast and loose with the traditions would make me conclude that he is just your standard Orthodox Shia Imam. Basically, you cannot believe a single word that he says. Everything is a lie. Everything is TAQIYYA, and he's pushing an agenda. And everything that I have studied tells me that's the case. He's a liar. Nothing is true of what he said. For some reason, my heart tells me something different, that this guy is the real deal, that he is he's so much into a cognitive dissonance that he has told himself, really, that Prophet Muhammad was the greatest man that has ever existed, and he was perfect in every single possible way. So everything that you read in the traditions that say that he wasn't, the story has to be false, because he was perfect. Is that level of denial. If it says he was violent, no, that has to be false, because he was perfect. It's like they have put into his head that Muhammad was Jesus, and he can deny all of the traditions. And the level of denial is ridiculous. In any case, well, do let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? Is he a liar? Is he just in complete and utter denial? Or is he a Mossad agent? Which, I don't know, if he was a Mossad agent, he would make a better job, because what he's doing is just confusion. Now, a little word of warning, because I have seen this before, and I think we're going to reach this, which is, let's reform Islam, because things are getting very heated. So as you've seen, MBS already saying, let's ignore Daif hadiths and some things like that. Okay. Now, that is very dangerous, and we are not going to allow it. Islam is on its last legs. As we've explained in previous shows before, is the fastest declining religion. They don't have the numbers for absolutely anything. We have the receipts, we have the traditions, we have the history, and as much as they try to push a different narrative, it's not going to wash. Now there are too many people involved in this. So one of the things that they are going to try and do is to remove everything that is violent. They are going to try and disavow basically all of the groups that are actually true Muslims. So Boko Haram and ISIS and the Islamic Republic and all of those things, they're going to call them all criminals, all bad, all Islamists. Islam good, Islamist bad. And I think that's the only card they can actually play at this point. Now, that is not going to work. Again, we have the receipts, but also imagine that they manage that, which is impossible. It's absolutely impossible. The traditions have been canonized. They are what they are. If you start removing the horrible hadith, you're also removing Muhammad. Then suddenly you're saying the whole story has been fabricated. You cannot believe that he was just being defensive and that Aisha was in her 20s. And then at the same time, you're going to deny Mutta and deny all of these other things that he did or said. You have to deny Khaybar. No, Khaybar didn't happen. Let me give you an excuse. All of those things are canon. If you manage somehow to remove that from the world right now, it's going to come back, because you're not going to destroy the hadiths. There will be those who will stay in smaller numbers until they grow. And I don't see that happening. As you see, what is happening in the West is the opposite. They are trying to radicalize as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. And the reason is Islam is collapsing. So they have to do something big before it comes to an end. That's the race against time. So they cannot do that. They cannot do this reformation or enlightenment and then saying, okay, so now Muslims, in order to get to heaven, all they have to do is be very nice and peaceful. Because there are these hadiths that say that if you pray, you will be good, you will be okay. And if you give to charity, you will be good. And all of those things. Because that's not everything that we have in the traditions. We have that in the traditions, yes. But then when you dig deeper, you will be confronted with hadiths. For example, Abu Bakr saying, I would not trust Allah with my salvation if I had food already in heaven. That is the line that they use to radicalize people once they are on level 8. It's like everything that you've done in your life, doesn't matter how much you've prayed, doesn't matter how good you've been, it doesn't matter. The only way to get to heaven is to go out with a bang. That's it. You cannot remove that from the traditions. Are you going to remove the book of jihad? Are you going to remove all of that from Sharia law? You've been telling to Muslims for 1,000 years that Sharia is the law of God, that you cannot change a single word of it. Are you going to throw away 95% of it and to make it like what? The Islam in the next 10 years is going to be like Buddhism. It's going to be, we just sit there and we go, all about peace. Is that how it's going to go? Because I've read the traditions. You are not getting rid of them. Okay. So with that in mind, that's why I've said careful with these sort of people. They are pushing propaganda. I must say, I'm actually quite impressed by Patrick here in this conversation, because he actually pulled him back and said, you are not answering the question, you're not answering, you're evading, and just got the answers from him. And he has pushed him like enough, just enough for a respectful interview like this about Aisha and these sort of things, making it at least clear or making it show that this guy has a very different view in his head of Muhammad. That is not the Muhammad of the traditions. That is not of the Muhammad of the Sunnis or the Shias. So what he has said is a completely different version of Islam. So even if someone like this sounds like he can build a bridge, but by making Islam all of a sudden very peaceful, it's not going to happen. If that was possible, they would have done it decades ago. We would not have had 9/11 or October 7th or everything in between. They would have stopped it. If groups like ISIS, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, the Houthis, Boko Haram, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these people, if they were not following the actual religion, everyone else, all of the other very nice, peaceful Muslims, they would have stopped them. They would have kicked some arse. They would have gone in there and said, you are making us look bad. This is not what our prophet commanded. This is not what we are meant to do as Muslims. And they would have stopped them. But here we are in the 21st century. We are calling the true Muslims that follow Islam, now they are trying to call them Islamists, to make a separation with everybody else. The peaceful Muslims, they are not Muslims. They are the ones in danger of being radicalized. They are the ones that one stone throw away. They can be radicalized faster than you can say the Shahada. Okay? They are in it and they don't even realize. So the problem is not Islamist, is Islam itself. Peaceful Muslim will be perfectly peaceful if Islam is around and if Islam is not around. He will be a very peaceful atheist, or he will be a Christian, or he will be a Buddhist, or he will be whatever. He will find his own way. Don't worry about him. He was peaceful before, he will be peaceful after. But the problem is with the teachings. And the teachings are Islam. They are not some corrupted version from the Muslim Brotherhood. Like this guy said, look at that Quran over there. That's the one from the extremist, which was written in the 1950s and 1960s. It's like, okay, Islam has been like this from day one. It's been 1400 years. So why are you pointing at a translation from last century? So what happened before? Sharia was written, I think it was in the 12th or between the 12th and the 14th centuries. And it is what it is. You're not going to change it. So do not fall for the trap of listening to these things and thinking, oh, well, that's good. It looks like there will be no problem. These people are going to sort it out. And we have the Islamists. Well, we just have to. What are we doing, by the way, about the Islamists? What is the addressing the problem here? Even Patrick here said we have the problem with the extremists, the 100+ million of them. Is more between 200 and 300 million. What are we doing with them? What is the plan? Number one, we wait until they continue to do bad things, and then we have to go and kick some arse. That's one option. Another option is we simply pull the plug on Islam, because that's what they follow, Islam. And it shouldn't be that difficult. We're in the 21st century. We know that the Quran has not been preserved, which is one of the main selling points over the last few decades. We know that the book was edited. We know it's not solely in Arabic, as they claim. We know that the Isnad has been disavowed. We know that the Quran told different stories. We know that there is plenty of things in the Quran that cannot be understood. Even words like huris, they had no meaning until the Quran appeared, and so on. So what do you think? Do we just wait until things really get out of hand, and then we have to really kick some arse? Or do we prevent that by pulling the plug on Islam before it comes to that? Your call. You let me know. You have any other ideas? Well, you tell me, but to me it seems like very clear. At the moment, as much as they have tried to stop the conversation about Islam, it's not going to happen. We need to have the conversation about Islam. And that doesn't mean only talking about the history or the morality. It means every single aspect of it, because we've been doing that research. So the conversation needs to be had. Remember this that I showed last time as well of Robert Spencer, that the Taliban had prohibited Islamic scholars from engaging in public debates. Now you know what the weakest link is, and that is information. It's knowledge. Muslims have to be kept in a state of complete ignorance and darkness, because otherwise they will see the truth. When the Taliban is saying to the Islamic scholars that they shouldn't engage in public debates, you know that it is all about information. People are being more educated now about Islam than any other time in human history. That is the weakness. The word Islamophobia was introduced by the Muslim Brotherhood simply so that we wouldn't have a conversation about Islam. So guess what we need to do? We need to have a conversation about Islam. And I really mean every single aspect of it, and as much as possible. Where it is the Sunnis and Shias, which I would discourage people from having that discussion. They're the same. They're just different makeup. It's exactly the same. Everything goes back to the Quran. The Quran, the traditions, and the early history. That is the weakest link by far. So if we address that, and we address that very quickly, then we will be successful at preserving lives. Otherwise, we'll have more things, more images like it's happening in Nigeria, and all of those things are coming to the West. So time is of the essence. Hopefully you have enjoyed this breakdown. Let me know if there's anything about that particular video that I should have discussed and I have decided not to. Let me know your thoughts about the Imam of Peace. Do you think that he is just a TAQIYYA boy and everything that he said is just a lie, nothing but TAQIYYA, or he is in complete denial or something else? And that said, if there are any other videos or any other discussions that you think we need to have here on the channel, let me know in the comment section below and we'll see if we can address them for you. Until then, I hope you have a good week ahead. God bless you all, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
There is only one Quran, right? Every Quran in the world is the same. That's what you've been told. You have been told a lie!
There are approximately 26 of the Quran.
26 different Qurans!
There are 0 Dawa guys apparently left on the planet who are willing to defend Muhammad in a debate.
Everybody can go and read it. This is a book full of mistakes in Arabic, in the grammar, in the spelling, in the pronunciation.
Whoever wrote the Quran made an error because they didn't quite understand what was written in the 7th century in the Torah and the Injil.
Stay away from these translations. They are propaganda.
We know that stories about Muhammad were made up on an industrial scale.
What in the world is this Injil?